Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if the strange experiences people have on psychedelic drugs are just like psychosis, or if there's something totally different? That is a really big question that scientists have been wrestling with for decades. Today, we're diving into some fascinating research that looks at the messy, overlapping, and sometimes surprising connections between psychedelic experiences and psychosis. It's not about saying one causes the other, but about understanding how we talk about, study, and treat these very different altered states of mind. Imagine two very different rooms. In one, someone has taken a psychedelic substance, often with intention, seeking insight or a new perspective. In the other, someone is experiencing psychosis, often with intense distress and a loss of touch with reality. For a long time, science saw these as completely separate. But what if there are surprising overlaps not just in the experience itself, but in how we as humans understand and react to them? This paper explores that gap. Back in the 1940s, some researchers thought substances like mescaline were like a shortcut to understanding psychosis. They even called them psychotomimetics, meaning they mimic psychosis. The idea was that by experiencing these drug states, doctors could better grasp what their patients were going through. For a while, especially in the mid-20th century, exploring subjective experience and finding meaning in these states was a big part of psychiatry. Think of it like artists exploring their inner worlds to create something profound. But then things shifted. The focus moved towards what psychedelics do to the mind, hence the term psychedelic, meaning mind manifesting. Today's research often highlights how psychedelics can treat mental health issues like depression or anxiety. The other side of the coin, how they might resemble or trigger psychotic experiences, has largely been put aside, especially as the biomedical model, focusing on brain chemistry and genetics, became dominant. This question, whether psychedelics can actually cause psychosis, is still a big debate, and it really matters. It affects how we treat people, how researchers design studies, and the understanding of those who use these substances or who live with lifelong diagnoses. This paper doesn't aim to give a final answer, but to open up a conversation about the similarities and differences in how these states are experienced and perceived, both by those going through them and by the institutions that respond to them. So, what is the actual difference when we look at the experiences themselves? When people describe psychosis, the most common type of hallucination is hearing voices. The voices might comment on what the person is doing, be critical, or even threatening. Visual hallucinations, seeing things that aren't there, are less common in psychosis. And when they do happen, they're often simpler, like seeing figures or faces. It can be really hard for someone in a psychotic state to tell the difference between what is real and what is just in their mind. With psychedelics, it is often the opposite. Visuals are more common and can become incredibly complex, especially at higher doses. People might also experience synesthesia, where senses get mixed up, like seeing sounds or tasting colors. A key difference the paper points out is insight. In a psychedelic experience, people are usually aware that what they're feeling and seeing is a result of a substance. They know it is a temporary drug-induced state. These differences in what people experience also happen within a bigger picture. Think about how the context shapes things. Psychedelic states are usually predictable in their duration. Even if someone has lingering effects like flashbacks, they're generally understood to be temporary and often entered into voluntarily. Culturally, psychedelics have a long history of ritualistic use for healing or gaining spiritual insight. The visions people have can often reflect the mythology and beliefs of their culture. Some visual patterns, like geometric shapes, seem to show up across many cultures, but the overall feeling, the meaning, and the specific content can vary wildly. Interestingly, the way hallucinations in psychosis are interpreted also changes from culture to culture. In some societies, they might be seen as contact with spirits, while in others, especially in Western cultures, they're viewed strictly as a symptom of illness. Even things like where you live can play a role. Living in crowded cities or moving to a new place seems to increase the risk of psychosis, and being a visible minority in a new environment can make that risk even higher. It highlights how much our surroundings and our social context influence our mental experiences. Now, let's talk about safety. Big population studies so far haven't found a strong link between using psychedelics naturally, in everyday life, and being diagnosed with classic psychosis. That is reassuring. However, more recent research does caution us using psychedelics outside of controlled medical settings, especially at high doses or without proper guidance, can have serious consequences. This risk seems even higher for people who might be predisposed to mood disorders or schizotypal traits. And those really challenging experiences, sometimes called bad trips, are linked to more frequent long-term negative effects. But here is a twist. Even when people have tough experiences on psychedelics, many still find them beneficial in the long run. They can even become a source of deep insight or meaning. This is a really important point, that difficult experiences aren't always simply bad. It's also crucial to remember that in unregulated settings, people might take substances that aren't what they think they are, or that are mixed with other dangerous compounds. This definitely raises the risk of adverse reactions. So, the safety picture is complicated. Population studies don't show a clear link between psychedelics and psychosis. But real-world use, especially outside of controlled settings, can be risky. These different types of research are asking different questions, and neither one has the final say on the matter. Now, let's contrast how psychedelics and psychosis are studied today. In psychedelic research, there is a lot of focus on two main things: their potential to help with mental health problems and the mystical aspects of the experience, feeling connected, letting go of the ego. A huge part of this is understanding set and setting. Set is your internal state, your thoughts, hopes, and feelings before the experience. Setting is the environment where you are, who you are with, and the overall atmosphere. Together, they really shape how the experience unfolds. Safe spaces, supportive people, and even the right music can make a big difference in having a positive or therapeutic experience. Psychosis research, on the other hand, tends to focus on measuring symptoms of illness, things like hallucinations, paranoia, and disorganized thinking. The actual subjective experience, what it feels like from the inside, is often left out. The prevailing view is that psychosis is just a pathology to be eliminated. And often, the descriptions we get are from clinicians, not directly from the person experiencing it. But there are overlaps. Hallucinations are shared, of course, but also things like withdrawal and anxiety. And crucially, the meaning a person assigns to their experience. Imagine a CIA agent who was dosed with psychedelics without his consent. He described hiding under a highway overpass, terrified of passing cars, convinced they were hunting him. In that moment, it was incredibly hard to convince him. His friends were his friends. He essentially experienced a full-blown paranoid delusion. This shows how similar intense states of fear and altered reality can be regardless of the cause. This difference in how we study these states is reflected in how the media and institutions talk about them. You see a lot of stories about psychedelic-assisted therapy helping people find meaning and relief, especially in difficult times like those facing terminal illness. But when it comes to psychosis, the media often portrays it as a story of violence and madness. This framing influences how we react. When a psychedelic user has a difficult experience, they might be met with empathy. But if someone is experiencing psychosis, the immediate reaction is often to call for medical help, and the institutional response is starkly different. For people who have difficult psychedelic experiences, the focus is on support and compassion. But for those experiencing psychosis, the response is often restrictive medication, sometimes even forced hospitalization. The paper asks a critical question: do these differences, like the fact that psychedelic use is often intentional and temporary, while psychosis can be spontaneous and long-lasting, truly justify such a different approach to care? This is where things get really interesting. The paper suggests that the intention behind an experience or how it started shouldn't really dictate the quality of care a person receives. Impartiality. Treating everyone with the same ethical care regardless of how their condition arose is a core principle of medicine. So what can we learn? The paper proposes that psychosis research could benefit a lot from looking at what is already central in psychedelic science. This includes paying more attention to the subjective experience of the person, understanding the role of meaning-making, and recognizing the powerful influence of set and setting the context and mindset on how these altered states unfold. Could this lead to a whole new way of understanding mental states, a move towards a more holistic approach in psychiatry? If we don't change, there is a risk that psychiatry will stay stuck in its current biomedical framework, potentially missing out on richer understanding and more effective care. This isn't just about how we treat people, it could also change how we scientifically study the causes and treatments of these conditions. The paper concludes that these are important lessons waiting to be learned, and hopefully we'll start learning them sooner rather than later. So, what do I think? This paper does a fantastic job of highlighting how different our scientific and institutional approaches are to experiences that, at a deep, subjective level, can share surprising similarities. The argument for impartiality in care is strong. The person in distress needs help, and how they got there shouldn't be the primary factor defining their treatment. I think the biggest takeaway is the call to reintegrate the importance of subjective experience and context into our understanding of psychosis. For too long, The focus has been solely on observable pathology, often neglecting the rich internal world of individuals. By learning from the detailed attention paid to mindset and environment in psychedelic research, we might unlock new pathways for understanding and supporting people experiencing psychosis. The limitation here, as the paper points out, is that while there are overlaps, they aren't identical. Psychedelics are generally understood to be temporary and often sought for specific purposes. Psychosis can be a much more enduring and distressing condition, but that doesn't mean we can't find valuable insights by studying them in relation to each other. Future research could delve even deeper into how cultural interpretations of hallucinations shape experiences and outcomes across different societies. And further exploration into how set and setting specifically influence psychotic symptomology, beyond just the immediate drug experience, would be incredibly valuable. This paper really makes you think about how we categorize and treat altered states of consciousness. It's a reminder that sometimes looking at seemingly different phenomena side by side can illuminate blind spots in our current understanding. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think there are more connections between these states than we currently acknowledge? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into the fascinating world of psychology. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.